Welcome to the Parenting Podcast, Talking ECCE. I am fortunate to have with me today the Honourable Nyan Gadsby-Dolly. Welcome, Minister.
Thank you for having me.
Our topic today is Preschool is a partnership, not hardship. Can you share with us what is your perspective on that topic?
Well, the first thing it is made me chuckle because it really should not be a hardship. A partnership, and I would imagine that's very important between the school, the teachers, and the parents. Sometimes parents underestimate their role in education, but parents are a part of the Education Act, and that's for good reason. Teachers can do their best, but if a child has no fear of what happens and how a parent relates to their behavior, they'll have no care for a teacher. So it always must be a partnership.
Nice. Thank you, Minister. And you made mention of the Education Act, and that just leads me to my next question. How does partnering with parents tie in with the Ministry of Education's strategic goals?
We want to create in education the ideal Trinidad and Tobago citizen. We want to create someone who has positive values, attitudes, and behaviors, who sees the importance of patriotism, who understands their responsibility to country, and who wants to succeed academically, who is able to have skills, and who has the right type of attitude that discipline, tolerance, and production that our watchwords speak of. That starts at ECCE. It starts as far as the womb. And when we speak about parenting, we know that there are many theories about singing to your children while they're in the womb and what we do. And we understand that trauma that is experienced by a mother who's pregnant can affect the child. So ECCE is 5 years later, even later than that. So we understand that those students may be young at that age. That partnership between what happens at home and how that is reinforced by what happens at school, this is critical. And we can't realize the end point unless we start with that partnership and having it at home.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Minister. So we've talked about parents as partners. What about corporate Trinidad and Tobago and, of course, the community? How do those things tie into our strategic goal?
In a very, very strong way. The government cannot do it alone. Teachers cannot do it alone, and certainly parents cannot do it alone. If we remember back in the COVID-19 experience, where we had an emergency, an urgency, this is where we can understand the role of corporate Trinidad and Tobago. They stepped in. We needed devices at that time, and they stepped in and donated over 40,000 devices to our students. That is just a small example of what corporate Trinidad and Tobago can do, how they can fill the gap. And there are many gaps that exist for different reasons. Some schools have a very strong network. They have alumni, they have PTA. Some schools don't have that. And so they do need that level of support. And it also says to the children, when the community and the corporate communities is involved, it says to the student, everyone cares about me. Everyone cares about how I progress. So the role of corporate is very important in a partnership as well, because at the end of the day, the students we are creating, the citizens we are creating, they are the valuable human resource that is going to now go into the corporate world and produce for them and be the disciplined workforce that they're looking for. And that's who's going to be our next micro-entrepreneurs, build our business community. So it's very important that everyone understands that, as we say, education is everyone's business.
Most definitely. And you say that a lot, Minister, and I know that
Yes.
you really do believe that it's everyone's business. So you've spoken about the importance of parents, community, corporate Trinidad and Tobago. Can you share with us what systems are in place to facilitate partnership?
So the one thing that the corporate community requires, if they are to partner with us at the Ministry of Education, would be a good liaison unit. For corporate Trinidad and Tobago, more than anyone else, they understand that time means money. And therefore, if when they come to the ministry to contribute, the lines of contribution are not clear and the interaction is not clear, it discourages them. So at the Ministry of Education or Corporate Communications Department, they are tasked with being the liaison between the ministry and the corporate bodies that come to us. So they have to create, and that's our Adopt a School program, create a clear understanding of how corporate can contribute. What do schools need? How does that tie in with our overall educational goals? So they have made that clear. And they've also provided avenues of communication which are monitored and responded to, so that when corporate reaches out, there's actually somebody there to listen and to answer and to direct them. So that is an important unit to assist in bringing corporate and the government together. And that's what we've been working on. That's why our Adopt a School program for devices was so successful. And it continues even now as we look to other areas where corporate can contribute to our education sector.
And this is a great lead-in for our next question, because you spoke about Adopt a School. Where can communities and corporate Trinidad and Tobago get information on how to get involved?
Well, our communications department is doing a good job. We're going to do a national drive very soon where we expose all of the tenets, the new tenets of the Adopt a School program. So they'll be able to access that information on Facebook. We'll also be writing to the chambers so that they would have the information to share with their members, so that it would be on our website as well, so that everyone would be able to have that understanding of how they can contribute. Very similar to what we would have done for the Adopt a School program initially. We'll be taking those same avenues to expose exactly what is possible, how it is possible, and to encourage corporate to come in with us.
Nice. Thank you so much, Minister. So the ministry recently launched the education policy and its sub-policies, one of which focuses on culture transformation and, of course, the education system. How do we transform the education system as a whole? Does this apply to the ECCE level, and how?
Most definitely, most certainly. And it is so important and critical that we understand that some of the behavior, the negative behavior we see at the secondary level, it really has its underpinnings and its start at the ECCE level. Because in most cases, those students have troubled homes, troubled histories, and we can trace back when we look at what's happening at that level, when they are now 13, 14, 15 years old, we can trace it back to things that may have happened when they were young. So that is why the establishment of the partnership is so important at the ECCE level, because parents who are invested at that level, they have to be encouraged to be invested at the primary level, and then they have to be reminded that even those students are getting older, they need their support even more. So we have to establish at the ECCE level that this partnership that we're engaging in now for this child is not a partnership for 2 years. It's a partnership for the next 18 years. And we have to make parents understand that their commitment, their strong commitment to the child begins at ECCE and it ends at the end of secondary school, because they need their firm support all throughout that time. So ECCE is a pivotal part, and that is why that policy, one of the sub-policies of the education policy dealing with the registration of private schools, is so important, because we do have a large private ECCE sector in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's important for the government to regulate what happens there, because the fact is that a lot of our children get their first started education at the private institutions, and then they come into the public system. So we have a duty of care even for the children who are in those institutions, and therefore that policy that looks at how the private ECCE schools operate, that's very critical for this partnership, this collaboration that we are speaking about.
Great. Thank you so very much for that, Minister. So earlier on, you spoke about the type of citizen that we want to have later on in life. Can you just share with us, how does the education policy speak to that?
The education policy speaks to the achievement of students. It speaks to achievement of schools as well. It speaks to our readiness for TVET. It speaks to digital transformation. So it looks at all of the 21st century skills, the positive values, attitudes, and behaviors that our ideal Trinidad and Tobago citizens should have in collaboration with their success, both academic and other areas, sports, culture, and so on. So the cultural transformation speaks to the holistic development of the student, and it goes down to the granular detail in terms of what schools must do to be able to give opportunity for that development.
Great. Thank you so very much, Minister. We will take a short break and be right back. Welcome back to the Parenting Podcast, Talking ECCE with the Honourable Nyan Gadsby-Dolly. Just before the break, Minister, we were talking about the education policy and the values that the policy speaks to. What is a role do you think parents play as it relates to the engagement with children and the types of citizens that we want them to become?
It's important for parents to understand where we are heading in the education system because, again, it's important for them to reinforce what's being done in school at the home and vice versa. So the Education Ministry would have engaged in an EduTalk series in September where we went to the public and said, these are the things we are doing. And this followed a consultation of 2020 and 2021. So in 2023, September, when we did the EduTalk series, it was aimed at ensuring that the public understood where we were going and we had the buy-in, especially of parents. Because there are things that are going to be different at school, and we want our parents to understand why they are different and how it ties into what they said to us in the consultations. So, for example, we are going to have some curricular changes and some timetable changes coming up, and those changes are to reduce on the academic and give time for the development of values, attitudes, and behaviors. Give time for students to be involved in activities such as their school garden, as an entrepreneurship activity for the students, led by the students, as the community engagement activities that we want each school to be involved in. And we want parents to understand that we are doing these things, making time for these activities so that our students have the opportunity to develop different skills. So, for example, the kitchen garden. If as a country, we want our students to make better food choices, and we want our citizens to choose to eat things that we grow in Trinidad and Tobago and therefore reduce our food import bill and increase our food security, these are the reasons that we would ask each school to have a kitchen garden. It may look different in different schools. Some schools may have hydroponics. Some schools may have a field that they are planting. Some schools may have a few troughs and so on. So it may look different, but the principle is that all students would have the opportunity to be engaged in that. And there are lots of rich learnings that can take place integrated into these activities. So parents may hear students coming home and saying, we had the whole afternoon was spent in the kitchen garden. We don't want parents to be concerned or surprised by that. We want them to understand that the students are not in school wasting time. They're in school doing an integrated activity which allows them to learn in a different environment and to synthesize this information from different aspects of their curriculum into an activity that benefits them. So it's important for parents to know what we are doing. And that's just one example of a change that parents may see. Parents must know, they must understand, and they must support what we are doing at school.
Wonderful. So we've been talking a lot about the education policy and the values, the attitudes that we want in our children. How is the ministry inculcating this at the ECCE level?
So the ECCE, again, will be our foundational level in a very important way. And so the ECCE curriculum already incorporates the values, attitudes, and behaviors that we want to see in our older children. So that is where our children learn about patriotism in, of course, ways designed for them. So you would see our ECCE teachers doing a lot of activities and our children engaged in patriotic activities, engaged in their gardens. Many of our ECCE centers have their gardens well formed and the children take part. So at every level, ECCE, primary and secondary, it's the same principles, but done in an age-appropriate way so that the children can have the foundational underpinning. And as they progress in the education landscape, they will now take on different responsibilities, but the same underlying principles apply.
Again, going back to the cultural transformation policy, do you think children at the ECT level are able to understand and have an appreciation for the culture?
Certainly. Certainly. You could recall, if you create the environment where students understand that, this is an important day for our country, you can see little children showing that excitement, showing that love, and sometimes they are imitating what you are doing. But it forms a deep understanding that they don't shake as they get older. There's a biblical saying, train up a child and, he will go the way that you expect him to go in. And that is especially applicable at the ECC level. Yes, they are capable once it is presented in an age-appropriate way. And that's why teacher training is also a very important part of the cultural transformation policy, because we have to ensure that our teachers have the skills to put across the information in that age-appropriate setting for our students to understand and to appreciate and to inculcate it, even at the ECC level.
So coming back to our parents now, what are the benefits of active participation by parents in education and development at the early childhood level?
What parents spend time on, children understand as important. What parents emphasize, children naturally see as worth their attention. So if a parent emphasizes respect, if a parent emphasizes time management, if a parent emphasizes involvement in school activity, once a parent emphasizes these things and leads by example, our children naturally fall in line. It's a lot more difficult to get a child to do what you say and not what you do. So parent involvement is critical, pivotal. Regardless of how small, children understand that their parent is involved, their parent is interested. And it also gives the teachers and the school that impetus to do more because they know they have the support. So schools that have that relationship between the parent and the teachers and the principals and the administration, they tend to do better. And the students also do better because they have that network. It's a network of support that's built around the student, and you are able to get more out of them.
Definitely. What advice would you give to parents who find it challenging to be involved? We talk about active participation. So those that, we talk about the cultural transformation. How can we encourage, or what advice can you give parents who find it challenging to be involved?
Oh, and I take this deeply from my heart as a busy parent myself of 3 children. And I would advise parents to do whatever you can. There's always something you can do. Whether you are the parent that sells in the store, or whether you are the parent that contributes to what is sold in the store. Whether you are the parent that makes sure to attend every PTA meeting, or you are the parent that can't attend the PTA meeting, but you ensure you come to the class meeting. You could find your niche of participation, and you can also liaise directly with your teachers and your principals to find out how you can be of more help. And sometimes the areas that you can help in are not immediately obvious. But if you liaise with the principal, liaise with the teachers, they can let you know what your area of contribution can be. And also it's important for parents to show their children that they are helping, that they are contributing, that they are in concert with the teachers and principals. Another very important thing that parents can do is not bad talk their school, their teacher, or their principal in front of their children. There may be things that you disagree with, but it is very, very negative and toxic when at home Children are the benefit of these conversations, and they often act it out when they get into the school setting, making it more difficult for teachers. So one way for sure, parents, you can help is by saying positive things about the school, about the teachers in your child's earshot while they're at home, so that they know that you are in support of their school, in support of their teachers, and in support of the cultural transformation.
And we will take a short break and be right back. Welcome back to the Parenting Podcast, Talking ECCE, with Dr. the Honourable Nyan Gadsby-Dolly. So, Minister, you spoke about being a parent and advice that you can give other parents. Now I want you to put on your educator's hat. As an educator, what type of teaching opportunities do you think parents can use in everyday life to help their child's learning and development?
Oh, well, I'll add my educator hat to my parenting hat then. Parents often overlook the fact that they are their child's first educator and primary educator. And so it's important for our students to be given chores to do at home. I think the first and most important lesson we can teach our children is time management. If we don't give them chores, in addition to them having to go to school and so on, then they get this wrong impression that they will always have just one thing to do. And they would not be able to understand that they can multitask, and they must, because that's a life skill. So my first piece of advice to parents, give your children chores to do. Make them responsible for something. Another thing that's really good, if parents can do it, and if it can be allowed, is pets. Pets are a very interesting way to teach children responsibility and to show them the duty of care that they need to have for their fellow men, animals, and that they would probably need to have for their own children. And it expresses to them in a different way the duty of care that a parent has for them. So pets are a good thing, very teachable moments there. Cooking is also an important part of it. Even something as simple as following a recipe, learning to follow instructions. These are teachable moments for our children. Playing games are very important as well. It teaches them to win with grace and to lose with the same. And that is an important lesson for our children. We don't need to have too many children taking their bat and walking off the field if they didn't win the game. So these are just some examples of teachable moments that parents as educators can ensure that they have with their children.
Nice. Do you have any closing words in terms of advice or messages of encouragement to our parents listening?
I think I'd just like to say to all parents that there's no manual that we get and that we can follow explicitly when we become a parent. It all boils down to a sense of love and responsibility for our children. And don't be too hard on yourself. We're going to make mistakes. We've all made mistakes. But once we are guided by love, then we can always pull back anything that we may have done wrong. Our children don't see us as persons who are infallible, but they must feel our love. And once they feel that, then they will forgive us for anything that we may have done wrong that we wouldn't, normally do if we thought about it a little closer. And I want to encourage all parents, stay close to your children. Stay close to them. As they get older, stick closer. And especially children who are in secondary school. I'm to encourage all our parents, don't leave your child in Form 1. Get closer. And get closer as they get to Form 3, because those are the levels that we see the most indiscipline in. And that's when they need you the most, even though they will deny it. So I want to encourage you, stay close to your children, show them love, show them discipline, and let's work with our teachers to create the ideal Trinidad and Tobago citizens that we all want.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. the Honourable Nyan Gadsby-Dolly, Minister of Education. To the listening and viewing public, thank you for joining us on the Parenting Podcast, Talking ECCE.